Everybody, I will now call the meeting to order to get us started. And before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that our meetings and our neighborhoods here at UBC are on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam people. We also have a new conflict of interest protocol. And so before the start of every meeting, I will announce whether any conflicts of interest have been declared by our board members, and then ask if any would wish to announce or declare a conflict of interest. So I'm going to start with that now. I'm not sure if everyone knows that this is coming. So at this time, no conflicts of interest in relation to any items on the agenda have been disclosed in advance of this meeting. Before we continue, would any directors like to declare a real, potential, or perceived conflict of interest in relation to any of the items on the open session agenda? Okay, not seeing any, then we will move on. So we'll start with approval of the agenda. I move that the board approve the March 18th, 2025 open session agenda as circulated, seconded by Ron. Discussion? All in favor? Okay, motion passes. Then approval of the minutes. I move that the board approve the February 18th, 2025 open session meeting minutes as circulated, seconded by Jake. Any comments or corrections, additions? Okay, all in favor? Okay, motion passes. And we move now to the external reports and presentations, and we're delighted to welcome representatives from the RCMP detachment. So Chuck and colleague are here, and we will turn the floor over to you, and thank you for coming to join us here today.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to present our stats, and I brought some backup just in case you're not liking what I'm going to be presenting. So Josh is our operations sergeant at the detachment, so he's here to back me up. Anyways, so if you look at chart here, on this column here is the our crime type. So, you know, this isn't an exhaustive list of crime types, but I, kind of selected a few that would be of importance and interest to everyone here. And so what I've done is I've collected over a 3-year span. And so this all represents the UNA, UEL, UBC, Pacific Spirit Park, and Wreck Beach. So, and excuse me, and on to the right here, you can see where it's broken down to the UNA. And on the columns here, where it's the 2023, 2024 percentage change for both all in the UNA. So if we just start off now, I'm not going to go through all these because it'll be really, I know you're on a tight schedule, it'll be a little time consuming. So, but I'll just point out a couple of ones of interest, and maybe one right at the very top here is the murder stats. And, you can see we've had 2 within the last couple of years. And of course, the one in 2023 is the one at the the golf course where the shooting happened, and it's all gang related. And we've got 3 people charged. And in last year, there was a domestic violence situation where the victim was killed. And again, the person is charged, and it's going through investigation in courts. So you can see the percentage change here is 0, and UNA, there's been no incidents of murders, which is, probably glad to hear, see. So if we move down to some of our others, total property crime, you can see there was 946, a 10% increase, and for the UNA there was 231, 8% increase. We move down, and this is one of our mental health calls that we are experiencing a lot of incidents, and you can see in 2024, last year, there was 450 calls related to mental health. And that can be anywhere from check the well-being of someone, attempted suicide, suicidal calls, and just generally some of you notice some of the homeless or that are in or around the neighborhood, and a lot of times they could be yelling nonsensical things and appearing to be out of their state of mind. And a lot of times we do get calls for service just to check them out. And if we determine that these people do require medical attention, we do have that power under the Mental Health Act to apprehend them, take them to a hospital, and in this case it's DGH. Unfortunately, there's no resources here at the UBC hospital for us to take any mental health patients there. So a lot of times these calls can take 3 to 4 hours just from the time we deal with them, assess them, determine whether they're a harm to themselves or others, and whether they're out of a state of mind. We take them to the hospital, and it could take anywhere from 2 to 3 hours before a doctor even is able to see them. So, by the time a member is finished with these people, it can be a couple of hours. So if you look at the bottom here, our total calls for service is 5,955. That's a 36% increase from 2023. And compared UNA, there's 968 and a 20% increase. So as you can see from previous years, this number has been increasing. So this slide here is the total for the whole area. Starting from 2018, there was 4,098 files, and then 2019, 4138, and this is where it dips. 2020, there was 32, and continuing on 3476, 3118, and then 2023 is when we start to see an increase in the calls for service. So 3841, and last year a real spike, 5955. So obviously this area here is during a COVID time when most of the people were at home. There's restrictions, and there was limited gatherings, and a lot of people work from home. Okay, compare this to the UNA. The trend is pretty similar. 792, 807, a little drop, 782, and there's a slight increase to 854, and then it drops down to 714, 770, and then 968 last year. So, if we look at these two graphs, the trend is pretty similar. You know, the increasing trend from 2023, 24 is there. And if we compare it to the total, so this is our total calls, 5955. You can see where the UNA sits. EBC is right about 2,500, and then the UEL is just about around 2,000, and Wreck Beach there is about 100, a little over 100, 140 calls thereabouts. So Wreck Beach, our busiest times is during the warm and spring, summer, fall season from May to the end of September. So, you know, the trends are continuing. I had a look at our stats last year at this time in March 2024, and it was 1,660. And as of yesterday, stats are year-to-date is 1150. So not much of a change, but again, a bit of an upward trend, right? So that's kind of where we're, look back at the all, that's kind of where we're trending right now, is trending up with the calls for service. And, you know, we continue to see a lot of growth in this area, construction, and just a lot of people coming into the neighborhood here. And I don't see it changing much. It's just gonna, population is just gonna increase, as well as the student resident population. You know, right now there's, this past year, there's 16,500 students in residence, and you know, they're planning for another 2,000 units to be built in the next couple of years. And unfortunately, that number isn't even counted as permanent residents, according to Stats Canada. So, you know, still that population is calls for service that we get every day, and you know, it really increases what we do, and it's just you know, it's something that I think the province will have to address sooner or later, because with the resources that we have, and I've mentioned this many times here, that you know, we're not keeping up with the growth of the community, and it's I don't know where the province is planning, but you know, we've been trying for years, and with the blessing of our headquarters, they know our circumstances here, and they're working on it as well. So it's really up to the province to begin to increase the resources here to ensure that the community is safe for now and into the future. Any questions?
Yeah, Jake.
Yeah. I can actually, sorry, I'll just go back to this slide here so you can see some of the.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions and a comment at the end. What's the difference between property crime and B&E?
B&E break and enter is, you know, crime that somebody has broken into either a commercial property or residence. So you could have a break and enter, but not necessarily property that's stolen, but it is property. You know, a lot of times you do have that associated. So property crime, for the most part, it is something that you know, gets stolen. You see a lot of that with in the area here. Somebody leaves a backpack, it's stolen. Computers left in a study area, in around the community center, or property that's taken from somebody's yard. It could be not necessarily in the house, but if a bike is on your front lawn and it's taken, it's stuff.
Okay. I'm not finished, Ron. The trend line is concerning, obviously. Is it similar for the city of Vancouver?
That I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure on that.
Okay. If I look at the service calls, you talked about roughly 6,000 service calls. On a per capita basis, total population of UBC is around 35 or 36,000. So that's one call per 6 people. If you look at the different areas, this is where it becomes kind of concerning to me, particularly if I live in UEL. For UBC, it's around 1.54 calls per, 1 call per every 5.4 people. UNA, it's only 1 call in every 15 people in that area, and we have about 15,000 to 16,000 people in UNA. In the UEL, it's 1 call for every 2.5 people. Is that an accurate number? Like every...
Well, you have to look at the area in itself. The UEL population is nowhere near the population here, right? But
yeah, it's 5,000 roughly.
Businesses, and there's more of a congregation of people, whether it be students, construction workers, residents. So there's more incidents of reported crimes in that area, probably because of all the businesses in and around UEL. I mean, this area is starting to build up too with the businesses. So I can't really pinpoint exactly unless you do an in-depth analysis of all files. That's obviously very time consuming. You have to read each file to determine where the crimes are happening and and what the circumstances are. But
seems like really.
That also, the UEL also includes Pacific Spirit Park. So Pacific Spirit Park is a large area that gets a lot of use, and we do get a number of calls.
Yeah. And then just the final question, you kind of hinted at it already, though, is that what's been the change in terms of the numbers of officers in the detachment currently as compared to 5 years ago?
I can tell you we haven't had an increase since 2005. So
wow.
That in itself is concerning.
That's very concerning. So how do you accommodate like all the increase of calls?
Well, we do it, and it puts a lot of stress on our members. It depends on the call. It's not like going to a call and you're done. Some of these calls that we go to require a lot of follow-up, and that takes a lot of time to investigate and do the investigation, prepare cases where there's charges for court, and also the time it takes to be in court for some of these cases. It's not just an afternoon. It can run 2 weeks, 3 weeks, depending on the circumstances and the situation.
Thank you.
Ron, I'm looking here at this stats for missing persons, 11. Do you have any record of them being resolved?
Sorry?
The missing persons.
Yes.
Do you have any record of were they all resolved, the people found? Are they still missing?
I can say that we don't have any really outstanding people that are missing. We do have cases where they have been missing, and these are older historical files where we suspect the person may have taken their own lives, somewhere else, and have never, been located. We would love to locate these people, whether, there's foul play or if they truly take their own lives, just really for the family's sake, and so that they know what's happened to their loved ones. Most of the missing people that you see, they've all been located. And as far as I know, there hasn't been, like last year, there hasn't been one that hasn't been found or, determined to be not missing. I mean, a lot of times people do call and say, oh, I can't get a hold of my daughter. She hasn't called me back in 2 hours. I'm not, I'm being serious about this, right? And we take that as a missing person. So we do the checks and maybe determine that person is busy at work or, studying, and they've got their phones on because they don't want to be interrupted. So we do get a lot of those calls too. I don't know, Joe, can you think of any incidents, Josh? That,
We don't have any else.
yeah, I didn't think so, yeah. And like I said, it would be an old missing case of more than 5 years ago. Situation.
So Evan and then Sandy.
Commander. So I found a category I didn't see it from the list is animal attack. Like some residents see that they saw the coyote, those kind of things, or some other like a large big dog like biting people. So do we have the statistics here or any report?
With coyotes?
Yeah.
Or just any complaints related to animals?
Like dogs,
Yeah,
large dog.
We do get animal complaints, and we try to deal with them the best we can. We don't. Still a lot of forest, and you will see wildlife, coyotes in the area, and for the most part, they're not a threat to humans. They may be a threat to your small pets, but for the most part, if they are aggressive and they are attacking people, we will work we'll work with the conservation officers to try and track these coyotes down and maybe relocate them. But for the most part, we don't get a lot of complaints about coyotes. And again, we do get dog complaints, mainly in the Pacific Spirit Park, where they're either larger dogs that are running off leash and will run after somebody, or there'll be a dog bite. And those are the type of calls that we'll deal with as well.
Sandy?
Yeah, thanks for sharing. My question is, do you see the trend of increase of homeless and drug users at the UBC campus or the UNA residential area? Thank you.
The whole homeless situation is a problem that, it's a societal problem, really. We don't have a solution for it. And not only do we not have a real good solution, and this goes right up to the top government here in Canada. It's a problem where there's no real good alternatives. I mean, we talk about providing mental health services and treatment centers, but you don't see a lot of that action in place, and it always seems to default to the police. They say it's a mental health situation, police shouldn't be there, but the first place people call is police. So we deal with a lot of, again, you can see the stats, we deal with a lot of mental health situations, and some of these people could be violent and dangerous. We don't know that. And if they're high on drugs, they can be unpredictable too. So these calls not only, like I say, take a lot of time, you're also taking a lot of members. Each one of these calls are at least 2 or more members. is you just really don't know how these people act. So for the most part, we haven't had a lot of violent situations with mental health people in around here. And yes, homeless is a problem. But you know, when we deal with them, we deal with them with compassion, right? It's cold out. They don't have a place to stay. We want to see how we can help them out. Is there a shelter nearby in Vancouver that we can take them to? You know, a lot of times the businesses are okay with even just allowing them to stay overnight in their vestibules, or McDonald's. They're usually pretty good. You see a lot of people that kind of stay out of the elements during the middle of the night because they're open all night. So, you know, there's no easy answers for homeless, and I believe we, not only the police, but government of all levels are working on that. And, you know, there's no permanent solution. You can see that just going down to the Vancouver down on the side.
Are there any other questions for now? Okay, well, first of all, thanks, Chuck, to you and to all of your colleagues as well. And I can say that we, the UNA Board of Directors, shares your concerns about the resources and facilities as well. And so I hope that can be an area where we have kind of everyone pushing in the direction of us getting you the resources and the facilities that you need. So, Michael?
I just want to say one thank you too, because laying it out in this manner, the breakdown between UNA and really, really helpful. So really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks again.
Thank you, everyone.
Great. So with that, we will move on to our next guest. This is the UBC Westbrook Place Neighborhood Plan update. And we have Joanne and Leah, I believe. Is that Emma is here? Okay, not Leah. So Joanne and Emma are here, and thank you for coming. And we look forward to hearing the update.
Great, thanks, Eagle. Can you all hear me? Is the mic on? Yeah, so thanks for having us again. We wanted to provide the board with a snapshot of some of the engagement themes we heard from the last round of engagement on key elements of the draft plan, and also give you a sense of what's coming next, which includes sharing the full draft plan amendment documents actually on Monday afternoon. So just to reiterate, Campus and Community Planning does meet regularly with Musqueam, and we are continuing to engage with Musqueam on a range of their interests, really trying to reflect their interests in all of our planning work. You know, we're looking forward to continuing that engagement and understanding how we can reflect Musqueam presence more in Westbrook neighborhoods as well as other neighborhoods. So this is just the agenda for today. I'll share where we're at in the timeline, and then Emma Luker, our engagement planner, is going to go through some of the key themes that we heard through the last round of engagement that went from February 4th to 23rd, and then we'll end with next steps. All right. So this timeline shows where we're at. We're actually in the final stages of the plan. And as I mentioned, our last phase ran from February 4th to 23rd, and it was sharing the key elements of the draft plan. I would thank the board for the submission that you provided as part of that engagement on March 7th. Also to let you know that many of your comments and questions were also reflected in the public engagement. And so we've been working at incorporating a lot of those comments and questions into the full draft plan document, either through clarification, further emphasizing, or addressing them in the plan. Some items noted in the letter, you know, are part of future programming, implementation, or broader than the neighborhood plan, and those will also be clarified in a response, a formal response that will be sent back to the board shortly. Not sure exactly when, but you can expect that to come through shortly. We're also committed to continuing work with the UNA going forward, knowing that many of the issues that you've noted and that we've heard are an integral part of a coordinated and collaborative approach to implementation, not just with the UNA, but with a number of other service providers like the RCMP and other emergency service providers. So yeah, I think that's all I want to say, and just want to emphasize that really appreciate the feedback to date, and that you'll see everything sort of rolled up into the full document that will come out on Monday. That will include a redlined version of the current plan that will be edited in track changes to align with the updated land use plan and campus vision, as well as just some minor housekeeping edits. And then that will, appended to that document will be the Appendix B, which will include the full details on Westbrook Place South. So I'm going to turn it over to Emma.
So just a reminder, this was phase 2 of public engagement, and we presented the plan layout for Westbrook Place South, a number of different features, including streets, paths, rainwater management infrastructure, and commercial and community spaces. The 5 elements that we presented included housing and built form, amenities and services, parks, ecology, and tree retention, rainwater management and climate, and mobility, streets, and parking. So we had in phase 2, 777 engagement touch points. We had some really well-attended open houses and some walking tours that I think make up the bulk of this, and 352 survey responses. So we heard some really encouraging feedback around park space and expanded green space, strong support for the new ecological park, and also retaining those high value ecological trees. Specific support from children and families. Actually, we did some youth engagement that was really excited about the nature play area that's being proposed. And also lots of support for a new sports court and new outdoor recreation space, and mostly as a place for teenagers to kind of hang out, as opposed to some of the other playgrounds that are more oriented for small children. Under mobility and streets, we had an overarching concern around safety, hearing that from pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicle drivers, and kind of safety concerns related to vehicle traffic, but also limited curbside space. We heard lots of support for active transportation and prioritization of bike lanes for all ages and abilities, and also enhanced transit. And then interest in how the neighborhood network is going to connect into the larger kind of campus network around connectivity and active transportation and transit. We also heard under amenities and services, some concern about them keeping pace with the growth of the neighborhood and the added population. Things like childcare, flex spaces, community center space, and then also wanting a more diverse list of amenities and services like a post office and elementary school. We also heard a desire for the new grocery store, alongside just overall support for a new grocery store, for that store to provide direct competition to Save-On, and really wanting to see another kind of niche be filled, increase affordability, and then offer some kind of greater diversity. So we hear a lot about a TNT grocery store and desire for that in Westbrook. And then some concern that it might not be big enough for the added population. And then finally, around building placement in towers, concern about impacts of towers on the loss of open space, and then also the placement in terms of sun access, shading, and views. And then related to that, some support around towers along the forest edge to really maximize existing resident views, and then also to maximize sun. And I'll pass it back over to Joanne.
Thanks, Emma. So this slide just reiterates what I told you about the draft plan being shared on Monday. It's going to include both the amended existing plan and an Appendix B that details out the full description and design guidelines and development controls for Westbrook South. In terms of next steps, so the first two bullets here really have already happened. We went to property committee of the board on March 12th with those key elements. We're here today, and starting March on Monday, we'll share the draft plan for comment. That'll be out for 2 weeks. Following that, we'll take the comments and any further final technical work and prepare the final documentation for the board. And that will also be accompanied by the final comprehensive engagement summary report. As well, we're preparing a table that shows how we've responded to the comments in the plan, either whether we have, how we've done it, and if not, why. And that will be, I think, appended to the board report. And then subject to the property committee approving the plan, next steps will be implementation. There's another document that has to go to board called the development handbook that just includes some more development regulatory controls for the development. That will go to board in September. That's actually not on here. And then as part of implementation, as I remembered, we're really looking forward to rolling up our sleeves with the UNA to look at more engagement opportunities for implementation, in particular around street design and transportation improvements. And to that note, as I think we mentioned at one of the last meetings, we're also updating our campus plan, which does articulate that broader network connectivity for transit, biking, pedestrians, and the vehicular network. So hope to come back to the board sometime this summer with that broader campus-wide view. And then, yeah, more engagement with the board going forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there questions? Yes, Jake.
Yeah, hi. I have a rather long comment on this. I'm not sure that I'm happy that amenities like schools or emergency services that I really call essential services just gets to be in brackets at the end of the example items, even after the post office, rather than a section of its own. Schools, do we want to see portables or extended hours like Surrey has to endure to accommodate growth? Close to 25% of their students are in portables or having to deal with extended hours. Do we want to start that way with the expanded growth? Have we looked at the capacity available in the current local schools and extrapolated out what that will look like 4 or 5 years from now? I don't see any of that. Really the conversation on the amenities such as emergency services in schools gets a real, quick pass over as far as I'm concerned. Same goes for emergency services. Are the RCMP and fire departments being advised of the growth plans? From the stats we were just presented by the RCMP, calls and incidents are increasing, yet the number of officers hasn't changed in 20 years. What was the population 20 years ago for all of UBC, including UEL and UNA? And what is it today? Today it's 36,000 people. So that's obviously grown several times since 2005. And are there similar stats available from the fire department that we could review at a future board meeting? I think would be interesting to look at. Then there are the health services. UBC students are to use student health services for their needs. Permanent residents have urgent care, which closes at 8 p.m. Any emergency type calls has to be transported down to VGH. I don't think we're giving enough time or research through to the schools and emergency services. Thanks for that.
And comment noted on where they're listed. This has come up quite a bit in past meetings, and maybe this is something we want to put on the agenda for a future meeting, just in terms of how we do coordinate with service providers. We can send a document that sort of outlines how we do. We share all our growth plans with service providers. That includes RCMP, ambulance, school board, we work. We collaborate with them. We support. We advocate as well for expanded services. But as Chuck mentioned, the responsibility resourcing rests with the province, and with the school board as well for how they deliver. So, but again, maybe we have a session. We're happy to participate in that and sharing our, we have a document about how we coordinate and collaborate with service providers on all these issues under a document on amenities and services. So happy to provide that.
Okay, you have more? I'll let Jake follow up and then
follow up to that. Yeah, that's basically what you had mentioned last time when you made the presentation. But I think there has to be a greater emphasis put on these other areas, that they at least get up to speed partly with these services that are essential. They're not just amenities like a post office.
Okay, thanks, Ron.
My question has to do with the school board. Have you had feedback from Vancouver School Board? Additionally, Vancouver School Board does have a trustee assigned for this area. Would it not be prudent of us to invite him or her, I forget who it is right now, to one of our meetings and discuss this exact issue?
I guess that's noted for us as well as for you. So thank you. Are there other questions? So I have one question, and it's probably entirely out of order, but we have heard, as you did, about the need for more space for teens. Like there's nowhere for them to go. They play in the treehouse sometimes. They sit up in the treehouse. But and I've been puzzling over that. What kinds of spaces for teens are out there in the kind of general palette of spaces?
What's funny is we actually heard very specific requests for bubble tea cafes that are open late. So I think it has a lot to do with opening hours and kind of like a cafe environment where it's not like a huge barrier to entry in terms of cost, but they're able to essentially hang out there. So that was one suggestion, other than some of the outdoor recreation spots.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear. Amongst the teenage set in my household and their friends, there's great excitement about the new hot pot place in the University Village. So FYI, everyone. All right. If there are no other questions, thanks again. And I believe we may well have a session in the future to discuss the draft plan with you, although that's something that we'll have to pursue. Yeah. Yep. But thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay, and that brings us to the campus and community planning report, and the report was in the meeting package. I'll note that Carol Jolly is not with us today. It's spring break, and I'll leave it at that. And if there are any questions related to the campus and community planning report, you can feel free to raise them and we can pass them along. Okay, hearing none, then moving on to the Electoral Area A Director monthly report. And Jen McCutcheon had a conflict and couldn't be here with us this month. This is not, I believe, a month for her newsletter, but keep an eye out. Probably, I would expect the next meeting to see her newsletter, and perhaps she'll be back to join us at that time. So with that, we move into the management report, and we will start out with the CAO's report. And so turn things over to Paul.
Thank you very much. As is typical, this is the management report for the past month. Fairly typical items under my heading of chief under a CAO. I just would highlight perhaps two things for the board. The one under human resources. We are proceeding with the implementation of our new HRM, our HR management system. That's really kicking off over this next couple of weeks with the intention to have that new system in place for June. It's more of an internal resource than anything in terms of service to the community, but it's an important aspect of growth and maturation of the UNA as an organization. And the last item under community relations, I was able to get a meeting with representatives from the Musqueam First Nation, and well, there's no one from UBC here, thanks to Campus and Community Planning for facilitating that through UBC's I think growing and strong relationship with Musqueam Nation. And so that's the initial contact, as it were, for me as your CAO to start to build towards engagement with the board and Musqueam Council as we go forward. It was a very fruitful conversation that's going to lead to another, which I hope and expect will lead to that kind of connection between our board and Musqueam Nation and their council. Happy to answer any questions you have on my section of the report.
Okay, Ron?
Yeah, it was actually that part of the meeting with Musqueam, Paul. They give you any indication of what their main interest or concern is with our development?
It's going to be, I think, a work in progress. I think as you might expect, the connection between Musqueam and UBC and the development through Properties Trust is much more significant than the services or the operations of the UNA in terms of Musqueam interests. So it remains to be seen what those particular areas where there may be collaboration or crossover possible. So at this point, there wasn't any specifics raised at the meeting. It was more, I think, getting a bit of face-to-face time and the start of more conversations.
Okay, any other questions for Paul? All right, then with that, we will move on to communications and Glenda.
Hi, everybody. Just a couple of things to highlight in my report. We're down to our final testing of the drop-in calendar. We should be ready to launch, if not by end of week, beginning of week next week. The campus resident also starts publishing monthly starting next month. So you'll be seeing hard copies of the paper delivered to you every month except for the month of August and January. That's it. Happy to answer any other questions.
Great, any questions? Evan?
Hi, Glenda. I was just share an idea like I'm imagining like a recommendation feature could be very useful. Like we use YouTube or TikTok, where like they can based on the user's browsing history and also some like a previous program register, like a family, kids, or you have 2 kids or something. They can personalize recommendation like what like new program or some like events. Yeah, so like a little bit like advanced, like more technology thing. But I think it's just keep in mind it could be very useful.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, and that should be exciting for this year because we're hiring our new part-time social media specialists very soon.
That's great. Any other questions for Glenda? Okay, thanks, Glenda. I'm looking forward to seeing the campus resident in the mailbox next month too. Yay! All right, moving on to recreation and Dave.
Yep, good evening to the board. You have my report in front of you. Just a couple of things to highlight. We just finished, as of 2 days ago, the spring art fair, which was another large success with engagement up around the 500 level. So that's the 3rd year in a row. So this program has been something that was implemented, driven by Josie Chow, one of our assistant manager of programming events. So I give her a lot of credit in that. And I'm available for any questions, should you have any.
Ron.
Okay, Dave, this workplace violence protection and prevention de-escalation training, are you using an outside trainer or is this all internal?
We are hiring an outside trainer to do that.
Okay, and have you picked the person yet?
Yes, we have already secured a person.
Okay, if it would be nice if you just let us know who it is and what their credentials are. Okay. Secondly, is supplemental, are you going to publish some sort of a manual on this that could be shared with the board?
We're looking at the current procedures that we have in place. Our assistant manager, Sheneng Wong, has been tasked with putting together a front desk operations manual. Within that manual, we'll definitely have information around the violence and prevention and tactics that can be used.
Sandy?
Yeah, thank you, David, for your hard work. My question is page 34, customer service. There is a verbal received to and it's unresolved. What is your timeline for resolving?
Verbal's usually within 24 hours. A lot of the times when something's verbal, so example, we had one today, an individual at the front desk wanted to provide some feedback, had some questions over stuff. Front desk came back, I was there. They requested if they could talk to myself. I brought them back to the office, had a conversation with them. So generally, if it's verbal, it's usually within the day to 2 days of somebody coming to the front desk because it's directly sent to us.
So you need to change that average resolution time to 1 day, 24 hours. Is not various.
It is various based on the availability of the staff member. So if the staff member is away on holidays, it'll generally get followed up by another person, but it will take more than 24 hours to get to that second person. On the other side of that is if we're going into a weekend, holiday weekend, it'll obviously, nobody's on staff to take any of the questions there.
Okay. Can I ask what the two verbal issues are?
Both this past month had to do with summer camps and registration, what was being available and what was being offered.
Okay, good. And what is the feedback form, since there is none here? I want to ask what is the form?
Currently right now, there was previously a feedback form. I've pulled that off the desk as we're starting to introduce the Zoho system. We are looking to bring one back in as a feedback form for our classes and other opportunities where people can voice their opinions. But we want to make sure that the form that goes out is accurate, and we want to make sure it's done well so that the information we're getting is what we want.
So you mean you are in the planning?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
I want to see what kind of this feedback form, and I try to understand now. It's not available, right?
It's under development.
Under development. Okay, what will be available?
Currently, right now, the systems that we have are Zoho, which we do produce a fair amount of our feedback forms from that are being operated. The verbal as well. We don't do a lot of recording at the front desk just because it's difficult for us to track if somebody's writing on a piece of paper where that piece of paper is going, depending on the time when that is submitted. If it's somebody comes in and wants to submit some feedback on a form or a piece of paper during our regular business hours, it generally is very successful in going to the person to be achieved of who wants it and can respond to it. If it's happening on a weekend or in an evening, there is a flexibility of what the success of that being answered and being actually given to the right person at that time. And so a lot of our discussions that we have been working with the front desk is that if people want to provide feedback, that they access the Zoho system and then it would reach us as through a tag.
So yeah, so what I'm hearing is that the best way to give feedback is online through that form. Okay, thanks. Other questions? Okay, so with that, we'll move on to operations and sustainability, and that is Wegland.
Sorry about that. So thank you very much, Hugo. The report is before the board and happy to answer any questions. Just one highlight perhaps two highlights from the report is one is for sustainability. So in terms of the garden renewal and assignment process has been completed. In terms of garden wait list, we have reached out to 85 different applicants for 34 available plots. So from time to time, we noted that some applicants did not pick up the plot that we were able to provide, perhaps because of location or preference reason. And then last but not least is for the UNA 311 project. Happy to update that we will kickstart the project on April and expect the project will be completed later in summer at late July, early August. So happy to answer any questions.
I'll just note that we just received the updated gardening guide prepared by the sustainability specialist, and it is really excellent and most helpful. So pass along thanks for that. Ron?
Okay, Wei-Gwen, this project 311, how are you getting the word out to them, to the members?
So for the 311 projects, what we will do is we have yet to develop a communication plans. So the perhaps more of a draft initial plan is to have a soft launch after the software is ready. And then later on, we will work with communication department to do a community-wide launch through all the channels.
Okay, any other questions on operations and sustainability?
Yeah, a couple of things. I'd like to thank Wei-Gwen for answering my questions on the process to get the dog park going. And I would like, Chris, that the answers to those questions be incorporated in the minutes of this meeting, because I think it's important. But I have a couple of questions on the costing of this budget for the dog park.
Hold on. Yeah, we're not on the dog park agenda item at the moment. We're on the operations report for the month of February.
That was incorporated in this.
No. So when we get there, though, I will make sure that you know. Yep. Are there any other questions relating to the management report for the month of February for operations? Okay, then moving on to finance and Athena.
Good evening, everyone. My report is before you. Just to share something with you that is not on the report is that one of the key member of the finance team, actually, she had a bad accident, and then so she's recovering, but that means that, you know, for the month of closing and year end, and also a system implementation, it creates some challenge. But right now at this moment, I don't anticipate any delay or anything. But just to bring it to the board's attention, so we just send her good wishes. Yeah.
Yeah. Really,
any question? Feel free to.
Really sorry to hear that, and do pass along our good wishes, but also know that we understand it makes your job more complicated. So I saw Jake, I saw Sandy, and then
I was just going to say we won't try to send you too many questions.
Okay.
Just a very simple.
Wait, I had Sandy next. Yeah.
Okay. Page 44. There is a HR system upgrade. I want to understand what is included in this HR system upgrade. It's only payroll or any others, like performance review, like your plan, work plan, anything else in this system? Thank you.
Thank you for asking. Actually, Paul touched base a little bit with that. This is really would be I would say one of the backbone for the back office. The reason is like not just the payroll. Payroll is the really upfront final pieces, but it included the onboarding, offboarding, including the performance review, including the tracking of the all the I would say HR record, all the employee documentation, and also training will be also locked. It's actually quite a big system that will be enforcing. Yeah. So Paul, want to add?
Yeah, just for the board's information, it's a complete HR management system. It's all, I would say, from A to Z or soup to nuts on HR. From the whole payroll is one part of it, but the whole management of our HR information, including records. It's another layer for our performance management process. All the onboarding, offboarding training as well. We also, through the system with ADP, we will have HR online advisors that are available for both management and for staff to almost like have an in-house HR staff person. You may recall that was a position that we brought forward for the budget, but we withdrew it given some pressures on the budget. We'd like to bring that forward next year, but this system will start that process and it'll be something we can build on. So it is a full HR management system.
Good. I hope perhaps after this system launching, we can get more overall report from the system. For example, some training times, some performance, comparing the overall report generating from the system. It's not only one column like payroll, other thing. I hope I can get some overall. Understand?
It would be worth us having a conversation about what expectations you have in terms of data. I think there's a line of separation between the board's functions on HR and the organization's functions. So there is the possibility of potentially periodically sharing some information in closed meeting, but we'd have to talk more about what your expectations are.
Yeah, I hope that this system we can get more complicated analysis report. It's not only a system, but analysis generate from the system. Thank you.
Perhaps sometime in the future, we could start that conversation at the Governance and Human Resources Committee. We would need to, have something that we're asking for from the staff to generate that conversation, but something that could come to the GHR committee in the future. Ron?
It's just a simple little thing. I think you saw today that BC hydro rates were being increased by 3 3/4% this year. What do we factor into our budget? I don't recall.
Right now 3%, 3 to 4%. But yeah, I think wetland. We actually BC Hydro. We are mainly will be the street light and all that. I think we should be able to absorb that. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, if not, then first of all, thanks to all of you for those reports and for all your work ongoing. And now Ron will be very happy. We are moving on to the dog park revised design report. And so we'll start out with an introduction of this topic from Wegland, and then we can move into discussion.
Thank you very much, Eagle. Just want to share with the board that we are happy to have our landscape architect, Richard, here today to do more detail or more technical explanation of the layout of the dog park. So what I will do is I will first talk about a little bit of a context of how we bring to the dog park to the revised design up to this point, and then we'll be open the floor to answer some questions from the board regarding the next step and also the design. So without further delay, so for the dog park, it's a long process. So basically, it started way back in 2024. First start with working with UBC campus planning for the site selections project. And then at the same time, we also connected with Community Works Fund representative to confirm the dog park meet the program criteria, and also working with Jan McCutcheon from Electoral Aid to get her support for the applications. And then as we moved on, we begin our dog park design process, more draft initially in September, and then later on in fall, we have engaged a full community engagement for the dog park design. So a few key items for the draft dog park layout and the design itself. For the site itself, the dog park is sitting on a future elementary school site, and we intended to design and lay out the dog park that based on our best knowledge of the current Vancouver School Board design to be away from the future school buildings. The idea is to ensure the longevity of the dog park. And a few key elements of the dog park itself is a separate large and small dog area, and then a new pedestrian road pathway that will connect Ross Drive to Weber Lane. It will be fully secured by perimeter fencings, plus there will be additional play features. And also as part of the dog park development, we want to enhance the open space on the southeast side next to the splash pad. So it will enable our residents to enjoy picnic area or open space for sports. And as part of the public engagement that we did from October to December, we have received a number of online submissions regarding surveys, as well as we have complete quite a bit of engagement. And the engagement result is overwhelmingly support for the initial dog park design that I mentioned. And also at the same time of the engagement, we are able to pick up a few features that and also prioritize the design features in terms of the dog park. So the top three features that we got from the public engagement is shading structures, planted trees, and sitting elements. And for us, as our team, we want to make sure the highest ranking element will be included and maximize where budget is possible, because they're the most desired features. And also noted in terms of the budget limitations, we do some cost management with the new revised design. And then in terms of the revised design, we have shrinking down the large dog park space by a little bit from 1,900 square meters down to 1,600 square meters. And so, some other elements has been reduced in order to accommodate the budget limitation that's we were noted. And also as part of the design compared to the original initial design, we have improved separations with the splash pad between the dog park by removing a pathway that was in the original design that will improve separation between the dog park users with the splash pad users. And finally, with the volleyball court retentions. So with the new dog park design, because of the reduction of the larger dog park space, we noted that we would be able to retain at the minimum of 4 beach volleyball court in the area. So a meeting has been followed up with Urban Rec to meet up to find out how to collaborate and to reduce the overall project costs with our collaboration. The meeting has been completed in terms of the meeting itself. The result is not finalized, but generally it has been largely encouraging. So there are a few ideas has been discussed as to Urban Rec will be able to cover the cost of the initial earth moving and the site preparation before the constructions. And another items that we discussed is the retention of the berm features that can support community use, for example, a sitting area and also for winter sports. It is something that's not included in the report because the meeting took place as after the report is drafted. And then finally is there is a retention of the 4 to 5 volleyball courts for future use. And then just quickly going over, that's pretty much sums up the revised design and the features that has been adjusted based on the most recent community engagement as well as the reviewing of the project budget. So now going down to the timeline and the project roadmap. And the timeline for the project is, if the project is approved in this board meeting, the plan is we will submit a Community Works Fund application with Metro Vancouver and Electoral Aid. And the expectation is by May 15, Metro Vancouver board meeting will be able to review and will be able to approve the Community Works Fund application. And should the Community Works Fund is approved, then the following is the key timeline that I would like to share with the board. If the Community Works Fund application is approved, then the next step is the UNA will be working with UBC for the development permit application. I just want to make a correction here because there is a change of the use of the area of the lot. So instead of street and landscape permit application, it is actually has to be correct to be a development permit application, and that will be subject to UBC Development Board review. But having said that, we do not expect there will be any delay in terms of the timeline. And then at the same time, if the project is approved by the Community Works Fund, we will also work with UBC Campus Planning to work out a bridge financing for early release of the Community Works Fund. And because it is only considered as an early release of the funding, so there is no cost expected to be associated to this early release to support the constructions. And having said that, the constructions and boots on the ground, we are expecting to be started sometime late in June, and the project will take approximately 2.5 to 3 months to complete it. And then if all stars are aligned, then we will see a dog park by early October.
So thank you, Wegland. And I just want to say that this has been something that not just Wegland, but also a committee involving the UNA and campus and community planning has been working on for years, over a year. And it's been a long process. I also want to thank Richard Finley, who's the landscape architect, who's with us here, who has helped us all along the way on this and come up with this proposal. And then Richard Watson, the outgoing chair, former chair of the UNA, who put a lot of effort into this and keep it moving forward. Before we move into discussion, I think it's best to start with a motion, and we'll get a motion on the floor. So I will move that the board approve the revised dog park design and project budget as circulated, and that the board direct staff to apply for supplemental funding for the construction of the dog park from the Community Works Fund. Seconded by Ron. All right, with that, then the floor is open for discussion. And I see Ron's hand, and then Jake's, and then also Paul's.
To begin with, Wegland, thank you for answering those questions I sent to everybody last week. And Chris, I'd like those to be incorporated into the minutes. So I'm just going to focus a few questions on the cost estimate. In the landscaping, we're talking about 36 trees, $600 a pop. Have we identified the species and size of trees we're going to put in?
Thank you for your questions, Ron. At this moment, it's too early in the process, so we don't have the exact species identified at the moment.
Okay, I'm just concerned we don't plant a future headache like what we have in Hampton Place. No birch trees, stuff like that we're going to get things as big long roots that are going to go into somebody's basement. The second question that I'll have on this is that we're looking at shade structures as metal roofs and wooden posts. Having just gone through as a president of a strata, a big renovation of some of our exterior, have we considered using hardy plank in this thing? Because hardy plank is a composite material that looks like wood and never rots and gives a better aesthetic look than metal.
Thank you, Ron. So perhaps for this more technical questions, I will defer to Richard. But having said that, I guess one thing that we will need to keep in mind is in terms of the project budget to see if we will be able to support a better material. So I will let Richard to answer.
Question, it's a good one. Very cognizant of materials and lifespan of everything that we do. It is a budget related item. So right now, we're pretty early in the process. We're going to figure out what we can afford for you or not. We would love to use something that's all metal and would last longer. Probably when I look at some of the structures that you're referencing hardy plank and or some of the engineered plastic goods that we now use, there are some out there, but it's going to be budget. So I don't really know how far. I think in my opinion of probable cost, if you want to call it that way, I guess submit by me right now as to where we're at. I think I might have allowed $10,000 a structure. I'm not sure.
Well, we just went through a process at West Hampstead, and we discovered that hardy plank was the most cost effective and fencing. So we forgot about using aluminum fencing. We went to hardy plank.
Paul wanted to briefly speak to that question. So.
I think the other thing to keep in mind is that for the structures, from the outset, because the future of this site is a school site, there is some degree of uncertainty about the permanency of any structures there and whether we'll be able to maintain them for a long period of time. So the intention was to make sure that it was something that was reasonably durable, but the expectation that it would be there for a short period of time. If conditions change and we're able to, the way we've cited it, and we've tried to plan for future school construction, and we want to do something more permanent, we can certainly do that. But that would be a future budget discussion. For this, we've tried to keep it relatively simple, and as Richard pointed out, within a fairly not a fairly small, a very tight budget for that aspect.
Okay, Jake.
Yeah, it relates kind of to this topic that Paul was just mentioning. What's the life cycle of the dog park at that location, do you think?
As we understand it, it's 5 to 10 years before a school is constructed there. We have worked quite closely with campus planning in particular, and they have regular contacts with Vancouver School Board. In their current capital plans, it's not listed as a project, and with some experience in school development, that likely means that 5 to 10 year window. It has to go through quite a bit of process before it reaches that confirmed budget at the province. So we've got a reasonable window, but beyond that, kind of vague response is the best information that we can provide at this point.
So just as follow-up, if the window is 5 to 10 years, that means that the growth of the student population, where are they going to go to school then in that 5 or 10 year period? Do we know that?
A bigger question than the dog park isn't going to help house students. And I think given the question and some of the comments earlier about how school districts plan, how they move into construction, I think it would be perhaps a good item for a future board meeting that we're able to have some Vancouver School Board representatives help the board understand those processes. I am aware that they do, annual calculations on expected student volumes. Eagle's been involved in a lot of that discussion with schools here in the campus area. They do their planning. They have their process to go through. I can't explain it necessarily, but I think given the concerns, it's probably a good topic for future conversations.
Okay, so I had next question, Paul Gambo.
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
No questions. Ron, you're done as well. Sandy?
Yeah, thank you. Eagle. So which means this dog park only will be available for the designated time, perhaps 5 to 10 years, right?
I hope shorter.
We know that we have it for up to 5 to 10 years. It could theoretically be permanent. You may not have been on the board when there's the discussion about the early planning, but we went to great lengths to look at the site planning and do a number of test scenarios for school development on the site to try and, as best as possible, align ourselves so that the dog park can remain there permanently. We don't have confirmation of that. There's still a number of years of school planning that have to go on, but we've done all best efforts to make it more than just a temporary location. But we know that we've got a 5 to 10 year window at this point.
So the planned location for the dog park is such that, given the ways that the VSB has been building school buildings and grounds recently, like there's some comparables in other parts of the city, that school could be built and the dog park could stay. It's a possibility. That was the discussion about where to put the dog park exactly, to put it in such a place that it may be possible for it to stay even after a school gets built. But the key thing is there's no guarantee. That's all.
I think from this point, I just concerned about the population increase in our Westbrook village. And the elementary school perhaps is necessary for us. Electric mentioned it's essential. And dog park, I'm not sure it's not essential, it's some pet friendly, I support. However, at this time, is it possible for we to postpone for resolution if we support or not? We invite Vancouver School Board to give us some assessment, let us know if elementary school will be available recently at some time. And then we just make a resolution for this dog park. I think elementary school is necessary for us, for UNA residents. So that is more important.
Okay, can I add, I'm going to address Sandy directly. Sandy, the Vancouver School Board has a policy right now. And the policy is, in the west side, talking about Point Grey, Dunbar, and these other areas, the public schools there are having declining enrollment. So their philosophy, every year when you register your child here and there's not enough room, they can move there. And for another 5, 10 years, that's going to be their motivation on the west side. Only after that will they address giving us a school. So I think we're fine. Okay.
Can I just add,
school board.
Can I add to that? Having a dog park there will have no influence whatsoever on whether and when we get a school. So putting that dog park there, it won't change the Vancouver School Board's timeline. It won't have any effect on that. When they do finally agree to build a school, then at that point a school can be built. And we may not need to move the dog park, or we may need to move the dog park. But in other words, the VSB's decision about whether to build a school and when the dog park has no influence at all on that. Yep.
But the dog park site is dedicated to the elementary school.
The planning that's been done and the location of the dog park, we spent over a year looking for a location. This was identified as the best location within all of the neighborhoods for a dog park. We then worked, knowing that there is a future school site, we then worked for a location on that site that would in no way impact the future of a school being built there. There is nothing to do with the dog park, its location, or its design as it stands now that would have any negative impact on a school being built there. It could be built tomorrow if that was the school district's desire and their budgeting. There's no possibility for it to have a negative impact. So The decision around a dog park for the UNA to move forward is in no way impacting the future of the school being built there.
Jake?
Yeah, just a comment on that. Like the budget for the dog parks, just over $200,000. As much as I'm concerned about the schools, the budget for a school build would be many millions of dollars. So having to move the dog park, if, we were blessed that, okay, we want to put in a school next year there shortly after the dog park is built. Well, $200,000 or $230,000 out of a multi-million-dollar budget to move the dog park isn't that impactful, really. As much as I'd rather have a school than the dog park there, I agree that we should have a dog park. I was a dog owner for over 20 years and don't have one anymore, but I'm certainly in favor. But I'm, concerned about the schools and the growth of the area and things like that. So from a budget standpoint, if the location works today and we get a school in 2 or 3 years, so we'll move the dog park for $200,000.
Or we may not have to move the dog park. Yeah.
Sandy, don't forget the $200,000 is coming from Metro Vancouver. Okay, they're giving us some money. It's not our money. It's not money we're taking out of our budget right now. It's coming from Metro Vancouver. And if we don't go and ask, if Wiggum doesn't go and ask for it, they'll give it to somebody else.
Sandy?
Okay, good. So that is a precondition. If we have no money from Metro Vancouver, we will have no dog park. Will you agree, John?
A resolution.
I would like to add the resolution, the $200,000.
We're asking him to go get the application done. If he gets the money for the application, we'll go forward. If he doesn't get it, we obviously won't go forward.
So I hope we can get clear words here.
I think it's very clear.
Yeah, it's dependent on that grant. If that grant somehow didn't come through, it would come back to us. We would.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question.
That
yeah.
is better.
But thanks, Sandy. I think that's important, right? Like if with the UNA hasn't budgeted separate money other than a small amount for the dog park. So you're absolutely right. Yeah. Okay. Are there other questions? Yeah, Michael.
Thanks for these plans. They look really good. I was randomly a board representative on the dog park back in Philadelphia. And I just have a couple of questions, maybe for landscape and maybe for Paul. The first is what's the sort of increase in the maintenance? Who's picking up the maintenance on the? It's in there.
Well,
I can answer for the operation costs. So I included that in the report already. And in terms of the maintenance, we'll have our team to address some of the pothole issues or some dugout done by the doggies. And then also we will provide dog waste pickup service. So there will be additional patrol and round of taking out the dog waste. So generally speaking, the cost is not significant and we are able to absorb that in our operations.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Sort of related and sort of on a design thing. In my experience with dog parks, dog owners bring their dogs in and then they actually use it as a social space. They sort of culminate around probably the shelter area when it's raining or within that sort of granular loop. But the berm presents sort of an area where dogs can defecate without their owners necessarily seeing and then doing anything about it. And I'm just sort of wondering, that's just a concern that I have. The backs of dog parks and the edges, and especially if there's a berm sort of in the way, I'm just a little worried that there might be increased untended species.
Definitely know that I will work review your comments and then internally making from operation perspective to minimize that, and also we will provide dog waste back as well as through signages to ensure education is there.
And just last one. Also, I just don't see it in the plans. is there some sort of protection devices around the trees to make sure that the trees don't get, again, urinated on so that they would die in the first year of their. Yeah.
Someone has to turn their microphone off.
Oh, sorry.
That's a great question as well. And yes, as with children's playgrounds, dog parks, we put up protection measures of the trees in the early days, the establishment years of the trees. So there would be guards around the trees. The ones that are on the plan perimeter to the fence are protected by the fence itself. There's not that many trees inside. Just working on the working drawings and taking the drawings from concept up a little bit today. And playing with placement of trees, etc. To answer your other question about the berms, they're fairly shallow in height. They're not near as high as the existing berm that's out there right now. Leasing of the excrement issue is on the
Ron?
Yeah, I just want to add something to Michael's concern because I lived in Montreal and Christina lived in Montreal. In downtown Montreal on Dr. Penfield is the main east-west street, downtown Montreal. One of the Molson family had donated land for a dog park for the people in what is called the Golden Mile. And you paid an annual fee to help pay for the cost of running the place. And that's something, not to make a decision now, but for later on, for waiting to report. As a dog owner, heck, I just went to the vet today. It ain't cheap. So, you know, you can certainly afford to pay $100 a year to have access to that park. Some for it. You know, we don't have to make all the people living in UNA pay for the operation of the dog park. I think we just want to make the dog owners pay for it if we could. But that's not a decision in our resolution today.
Definitely not a decision for now. But I'll just add, you know, I kind of think of dog parks a little bit like a doggy playground. And just like we don't charge families for using the playgrounds, I think there's a similar case to be made for the dog park. But in any case, that's not before us today. So, so Sandy?
Yeah, I want to get the clarification of the volleyball court. So now it's 4 or 2?
Currently, we have 8 volleyball court, and then in the future state, we expect to see at the minimum 4 volleyball court able to retain. So while there is a capacity to retain up to 5.
Now it's available for the volleyball courts. Now it's in using, right? The volleyball.
Currently, 8 is in use. They are used by multiple stakeholders, including our communities, as well as by Urban Rec on a set schedule during summertime for their league.
Okay, that is very good. I hope we can perhaps add some more sports court or sports facilities, like table tennis, table there. I know.
Yes, that's definitely a conversation for another time and place, although I'll just note that actually earlier in today's meeting, we heard a little bit about some of the feedback related to the Westbrook neighborhood plan expansion. And I was heartened to hear about some outdoor recreation opportunities that they're envisioning for the neighborhood expansion. And so that's good news. And I hope we can keep that conversation going. And in fact, we will have campus and community planning back before us, most likely to talk about the Westbrook neighborhood plan expansion. And it's an opportunity for us to share that feedback with them as well. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, I think we can call this to a vote. So the motion is, I will read it again, that the board approve the revised dog park design and project budget as circulated, and that the board directs staff to apply for supplemental funding for the construction of the dog park from the Community Works Fund. So with that, I'll call all those in favor. Please raise your hand. Okay, it is unanimous, and thanks all. It was a excellent discussion, and I hope helpful also for our landscape architect and operations team. And with that, it is just past 7 o'clock, and we do have a bit left on the open session agenda. So I'm going to call a 15-minute break for dinner, and call us back together at 7:20 to continue the open session. We have a few more items on the agenda and then move on after that to the closed agenda. So thanks, everyone.
Police are. And it was half that.
where we are. We are now moving on to the Governance and Human Resources Committee report. And a reminder that within that report, we then have a strategic plan report. So this is something that came before the Governance and Human Resources Committee and then has been passed on to the board with a recommendation, which we'll include as a motion after Paul introduces the strategic plan report. So turn things over to Paul to talk a little bit about the planning for the 2025 to 28 strategic planning.
Thank you very much, Eagle. So the report is before you, outlines, I guess, two options for strategic planning process. Kind of simplified one that's done more or less internally, supported by staff, and one that follows the model that's been used in the past, certainly the last strategic plan from the UNA with an external consultant. The recommendation of staff in presenting this to the Governance and HR Committee was to engage the consultant that did the last plan with the previous board. The timing is, of course, right. The current strategic plan is in effect to the end of the 25 fiscal year. And so now is the time for the new board to develop a new plan, which would then extend over the next 3 years and into that first year of the next board's tenure to get that overlap. The process that's outlined in the consultant's proposal is fairly typical, both of process that was used in the UNA previously, and I would say from my experience in this kind of work in the municipal world, doing strategic plans with municipalities. We have recommended continuing with the consultant that undertook it the last time. Mr. Nielsen is very experienced in working with the UNA, both having done a strategic plan, but also other consultant work for the UNA over the years. And so has a good understanding of the uniqueness of the UNA and its characteristics, its service delivery, but also its relationship with both with the community, but with UBC in particular. That's certainly from my perspective, and I think the board would share this as quite an important part of working on the strategic plan, is to have a consultant that has that understanding, so we're not in a position of having to bring a consultant up to speed before they can actually support the board in the process. As Eagle pointed out, this was presented at the Governance and HR Committee, and the recommendation was as per the staff recommendation for the board to approve the process. And with board's direction, we would move on with that. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, and with that, I think I'll make a motion, just so we have a motion on the floor, and then we can move on to discussion. So I move that the board approve the development of the UNA 2025 to 2028 strategic plan as recommended in the report and accompanying proposal, seconded by Jake. And with that, then we move on to conversation. I saw Jake had a hand up, so we can go.
Just one question on the consulting. Was that in the budget?
It's within our existing budgets for this fiscal year for professional services.
Are there other questions?
Yeah, just two. On page 75, use the acronym SWOT, SWOT. What does that mean?
SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's very typical process.
Okay.
I had to look it up too, I'll admit.
Use them so long.
And the second question is, what sort of time frame are we looking at to get a 3-year plan adopted?
So as kind of outlined in the proposal in the report, the process would run through April with the intent of a revised plan being returned to the board for consideration and adoption in June. And that that's the prospective timeline.
Okay, let's see, Jake has another question. Yep.
Not a question, just a comment. The use of the consultant, I think is not a bad thing because, people that are involved with any of those sessions where a consultant is present should take it as an opportunity to learn as well and absorb, as long as the consultants are worth the money that's paid to them. But certainly, I see it as a positive thing for anybody that's involved. If the consultant is good, you use it as the opportunity to absorb their knowledge as much as you can, as fast as you can.
And I'll just add, I did also at the Governance and Human Resources Committee describe some of my experience with this consultant on strategic planning for the last board, and I'll share that here now too, that not only as described was he very knowledgeable about the UNA, how it functions, its relationship to UBC, and kind of the unique jurisdictional issues that we face out here. But he was also extremely skilled at helping us find out, kind of come to a realization of what was most important to us individually and collectively. And then the challenging part is working that into the form of a strategic plan. And so I'll just say that in that last round, he was very skilled at doing that, very respectful, listened extremely well, and helped us work through not necessarily disagreements, but finding that common ground, I guess is a way to put it, of what were the most important things to us and our residents as we understood it. So anyway, I can't say enough positive about his work. Sandy?
Thank you, Igor, for sharing the previous experience for consulting of this issue, this strategic plan. But I hope we have this, we have all our talented staff here, we have our professionals here, we already have one term, strategic plan. And based on this strategic plan, I agree with Jake, perhaps it's opportunity for our staff to improve, to give more understanding for this UNA society. Consultant is not as capable as our staff. I hope we can consider perhaps it's not always rely on other side. We can rely on our side, ourselves. That's perhaps more competitive based on our talented staff, professional staff here, and also we have board here. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions? Well, no? Okay. So with that, we will move to a vote. And the motion is that the board approve the development of the UNA 2025-2028 strategic plan as recommended in the report and accompanying proposal. All in favor? The vote's unanimous. All right, thanks, everybody. And then moving on, the Land Use Advisory Committee report. And in particular, Michael, you I'll turn things over to you to introduce this topic, the community-led urban planning and design charrette.
Thank you, Eagle. So it came up at the Land Use Committee. We were talking about sort of ways forward to engage campus and community planning in particular, but sort of that our community more generally. And the idea has been tossed around about sort of a design charrette or how to engage the community a little bit better in more of a architectural way. with some of the ideas that we keep hearing over and over and over again. And that design charrette is, the idea would be to bring about, actually make it a formalized recommendation that we would bring as our board to both campus and community planning, as well as properties trust, as a way to propose that they do this for the community, rather than what sort of has been happening, and I feel like has been, for some community members, many of whom I've been talking with, feel very disenfranchised by the feedback loop that seems to be very pre-organized by CNCP, and so this is basically an idea to that I wanted to bring to the board for discussion, to see if we would be willing as a board to draft a letter encouraging the campus and community planning and properties trust to essentially put together an actual design charrette where they are looking at engaging the community in new ideas, for specifically around streets, pedestrian, cyclist safety issues. This sort of bleeds a little bit into one of the articles about what might be a future use of sort of the parking lot outside of our own community center. But more so just it's a starting point, and a starting point to get about creating actual drawings that come from the community, not that are being brought to the community, if that makes any sense. And so I guess that, yeah, the land use committee was sort of has been frustrated by this process in the past, and I guess wants to ask the board to sort of ask the two entities that sort of have this power to organize something and put that into a document that would be a board sort of request. That's it.
Okay, so Michael, is there a few ways we could approach this? You could make the motion, and if there's a second, then we can move on and discuss. Or if you want to elaborate or answer questions first before making a motion, that's also fine. So I think it depends on your preference.
I'm fine with making the motion. That I put forward the motion that the board write a letter that is asking, very, very specifically asking Properties Trust and CNCP to organize a community design charrette specifically for the many design issues we see around our streetscapes and our hardscapes and our neighborhoods.
Okay. Second by Sandy. Yep. All right. So with that, then we can questions. Anything?
I have a question.
Yeah, Rob.
How would this charrette work? Is it being online access, or how would it work logistically?
Usually design charrettes are organized as almost like a day-long or a half-day-long session. So it's a pretty formal organization process that requires a significant amount of planning, and it's in person for the most part. I've never seen it done virtually, although we probably have the tools to make it hybrid. But basically, it's something where there are leaders who are actually drawing out ideas as those ideas are being brought out. And there is sort of a real-time, not deliverables, but at the end you have a packet of ideas that are drawn out that actually have some substance to them of what things would look like, street profiles or pathways or connection points, or how wide paths need to be to fit, 2 baby strollers and a wheelchair, or X, Y, lots of different ideas around that have been presented in many different forms to me and other members of the land use committee.
And I'll just add that I've heard from some at Campus Community Planning, Carol in particular, but others that they are amenable to this kind of community discussion, and I think it behooves us, as Michael's suggesting here, that we lay out how we envision it working, rather than just have them invent some consultation process that they bring to us. So I think that it will fall on welcoming ears, I suppose. But anyway, Ron.
Okay. Well, my concern here is because we know that by their own admission that they are paternalistic, and so if we're going to write a letter like this, we have to kind of say who would be the point man. If we think this is a team effort, and we think like a basketball team, who's the person with the basketball running this thing? Will it be somebody from them, or would it be somebody from us? Or we got to start putting that out together. Otherwise, it could just be another, as we see in the presentations, the little checklist. You got a little sound bite, you got a little quick vision, and then they figure they've touched the bases. But how I'm quite willing to, if Mike wants to write a letter, but I think we got to make sure that we got some specific ideas, then to say yes or no, rather than deal in the gray.
Yeah, Michael.
So I think that if the board were to pass this motion, that would give a clear direction to the land use committee to actually start discussing this and putting this letter together and putting together an idea of what it is that they would want to do that we'd actually bring back to the board before sending it. So this is sort of a go ahead to the land use committee to draft the letter. And I imagine it would involve asking for a third party architectural consultant or urban design consultants really to be sort of the point person in the meeting, something like that.
So the motion does authorize the board to send a letter, but I think you make a good point that it might be best a draft might be best coming out of the Land Use Advisory Committee, and I think it would be, like you say, fine to come back to the board possibly at the next board meeting or whenever the Land Use Advisory Committee is ready with a draft of that letter. Would it be okay for us to modify or to amend the motion to indicate that process?
Yeah, that sounds good. So the modification would be to amend the motion to formally allow the land use committee the direction to write such a letter.
Keeping in mind that it has to come back to the board, and usually the board communicates via the board chair, although I think there's room for us to potentially co-sign letters if there's committee involvement, something like that. We'll come up with the exact formulation, but Chris, do you kind of have the general idea there in the motion or the amended motion? And I'll second the amendment as suggested by Michael. Okay, further discussion at this point, or things for the Land Use Advisory Committee to think about as they go back and put this into the form of a set of concrete proposals? Okay, so with that, I think then we'll call a vote on the motion. Should I ask you to read it, what you have?
The resolution reads, now amended, that the board direct the Land Use Advisory Committee to draft a letter for the board's approval asking UBC Properties Trust and UBC to organize a community-led design charrette for the design issues related to streetscapes and urbanscapes.
Thank you, Chris. Excellent work. And so all in favor of that motion? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Thanks, Michael, for bringing that and for keeping us moving forward on it. And we now move to new business. And so there are 4 items that Ron has introduced in new business. We'll start with number 1. And Ron, you can speak to the item, and then we can wait, or you can decide whether there's any action that needs to be taken.
These 4 items have no requirement for a resolution tonight, but they're just something that probably needs to go on record and possibly some discussion. The first one, we've asked Paul to, through the governance committee, to look at board remuneration and expenses, but I want to be on record that any recommendation that comes through the governance committee and adopted by the board will have to be subject to approval at an AGM. The reason I want that in record is because things tend to get out there. People start to hear words and talk, okay, and I don't want to hear words that, well, the board's going to give itself a big increase. No, we're asking to have a review done to see if our compensation is reasonable and competitive, and it'll go through your committee. Okay, that's what I really want and the minutes reflect.
Can I just speak to that? So at the moment, there is no directive to staff to prepare any kind of report or do any kind of review. So it's something that if you or other board members have specific directives.
I had that meeting. I thought this was something that was going to be initiated. We're not going to initiate a review.
I think it's important for the board to understand that if there's a conversation or a meeting with a few board members or one board member, and there is some ideas about something that might get done, that doesn't constitute direction to staff to undertake work. Staff undertake work at the direction of the board. So if my expectation is that we would get that direction perhaps as a recommendation from a committee that would come to the board, or the board ask a committee to consider something, whatever the case may be. I am not in a position to dedicate resources to undertake research or do work until I have that direction from the board. We've got lots of things to do, and I don't want to be moving forward on projects unless I understand that I've got the direction of the board.
Well, it's the impression I got from that meeting that the governance committee would have a meeting to review this and report back to us.
I think so. If there is separate, generally speaking, we need to proceed on things as a board. Things, if you want something done, it needs to be shared with the whole board. The board needs to consider it. The board needs to decide. There needs to be a motion, and the board needs to vote on it. So I didn't understand the results of that meeting as indicating a particular direction in that regard. And I'm not going to speak anymore to a meeting at which only a few people were present. I think that's not appropriate for the board to undertake things without the discussion and full participation of all the board members. So again, I'll say if there's something that you or other board members wish to initiate related to a review of board compensation, and I'll just say frankly, it's not something I recommend this early in the term of a new board, but if it is something that you or others wish to initiate, then that's something that needs to be done in full and with the board as a whole. So it's up to you, or we could hold off on it for a while. You could come back to the board with a specific proposal.
I'll plan to come back to the board because this is something that's subject to members' approval at an AGM, and having organized enough AGMs in my life, you have to start early enough along the process. Okay, otherwise you can't rush it out at the end. Okay, but I'll come back with that.
Okay, thanks, Ron.
Now, the second item, we had a finance committee meeting, and Paul, I just wanted, this is something that should be brought to everybody, and there's a recommendation that Jake made that we develop a purchasing policy, okay? A well-defined policy and procurement. And I just, I want to confirm that the finance committee has kind of made that recommendation, and that Paul had indicated that he would come back with something for the board to look at by the end of June. Okay. And, in the minutes.
Okay. All right. Let's see. The next was community engagement.
Yeah, I'd like to get this. One of the reasons I joined is I've always felt that well, let's go back to Churchill's book, The Wilderness Years. People get the government they deserve. Okay. And our outreach needs to be improved dramatically. And the committee to do that is a community engagement committee. So now we're into our 4th month, and I'm wondering when this committee is going to get going. We need to call, I need to get the chairman to call a meeting. I think we may not have many volunteers, but we want to start meeting with staff and start planning. Okay. And here we are. It's March. It's elected in December, and I'm a member, and I want to know, when do we start?
So my understanding is that the orientation for new members, including yourself, everyone's a new member, I guess, except for Paul, who was a resident member before. So that orientation the planning is underway. I don't know, Glenda, could you speak just to the timeline on the orientation and the first meetings?
Yeah, sounds good. The plan so far is that additional members might be confirmed tonight, and then we will be calling them, confirming their membership. Once they confirm, we will reach out to everybody with their availabilities for an orientation. The orientation outline has already been approved by CAO chair and CAC chair. That will we have the presentation and the orientation ready already. So once we've confirmed a time availabilities for all the members, then we will have that first meeting. So I would say anytime between tomorrow and maybe first week of April.
Okay. All right. Anything else related to that? Okay. And then I guess number 4 under new business, the campus resident article on pedestrian-friendly public square.
I tabling now. I've given to everybody a brief. Sorry. When I read this article in the campus resident, I'll be very honest, I think it's very one-sided. Okay, blatantly one-sided. And there's some design weaknesses in that parkade because it wasn't designed. It was designed for a village. It wasn't designed for 40,000 people potential. But given that, and working with it, and it's also not just for the people who live in Westbrook, it's also for all neighborhoods. I've had conversations with 3 or 4 strata residents in the last week, St. James House, Balmoral, Thames Court, and these are, a lot of them are elderly people. They drive. They can't come up, one of them cannot come up the escalator. She literally cannot come up the escalator because she needs a walker. So any idea of, we're going to take the upstairs, the parking area, and make it nice and cute, and some shade, some trees and things. Well, yeah, but if you look down on the base, on the parking lot level, lower level, it wasn't designed to move people up and towards that readily, with the exception of one escalator. And I challenge anybody here to go and to the plazas on the corner of Griffiths and Kingsway and Burnaby, which I know very well because my son lives near there, which has a Save-On, which has a liquor store, which has a Shoppers, and it's totally designed for people to come up and down from the lower level. Okay. Plus, there's other aspects, we tend to talk about, commercial operations around here. But I think if you started looking at some of those leases, you would see that parking availability was something that Save-On would be very insistent on. Okay. So I'm not saying there's not problems with interaction with pedestrians. There are some real you know, I had to wait for a couple of minutes around the roundabout on the west side of Hampton the other day to try to explain to a young fellow that he should take his headset off and look both ways, otherwise I'm gonna run over with my electric car, by the way, okay, you know. And so I think this is something that's, we shouldn't be looking at things very simplistically here. We should be looking at things in a very more, you know, measured manner. There are some traffic issues there that can be easily handled, as you can see with my last recommendations, okay? You know, a lot of the stuff around Westbrook Village when it comes to traffic, pedestrian interaction are what I would call cutesy, okay? We've got little crosswalk signs about this high. Well, in the middle of the night, you can't see them when you drive the car, okay? But that's beside the point. But, you know, if we want to look at some traffic improvements there, they're very easy to do. There's something we should be talking to UBC with. They're going to start making everything one way on Burton, go around, okay? You don't have people coming back and forth in the cars and making a proper crosswalk. But I really think that any idea to turn this thing into a park, I know it's going to be opposed by a lot of people in my neighborhood. I've talked to some people I know in Hawthorne. It's not going to be readily accepted by some of the other neighborhoods. And what it will do, rather than people using Westbrook Village to shop, they'll just go to Vancouver. And then our whole concept of carbon footprints is going to go out the window.
So before recognizing other people, I just want to note that the UNA has not taken a position on the square, and so speaking as a member of the newspaper editorial committee, I'll just say that I know they welcome letters to the editor, and in fact are excited by the possibility of a little bit of debate about something in the newspaper. So that's a promising venue for your responses, and then I'll add in the submission that you made, it's in the meeting package. There are a lot of really helpful ideas about dealing with some of the specific problems around the square, including what you mentioned about, you know, the possibility of a one-way and signage and there, you know, some other things, and so that could be very useful. I would consider conveying that to UBC Properties Trust, which owns and manages that lot as part of their commercial district. And I guess for further clarification, Paul, and then I think Michael had something he wanted to add as well.
So just to bring some context to the discussion, I think as Hugo pointed out, the UNA is not taking a position on that idea. It's a newspaper story only. That doesn't represent the UNA view. That is a journalist view. I think that's an important point to make. The other aspect is in terms of the traffic circulation in that area, we have raised this with both Campus Planning and Properties Trust as recently as a few weeks ago in my regular meetings with those two bodies, and they have gone away to do some collaborative work to put together a proposal between the two entities to do some traffic study in the area, engage a consultant to re-look at it, given that we're now a decade or more on since it was originally planned and designed, and to see where it's failing, where it's not, and see potentially what recommendations may come of it. So I think a lot of the comments, their Properties Trust is well aware of the comments. They've got the agenda and they've asked me some questions about this conversation. Campus Planning is also quite aware of those conversations, and they will inform that work. Expect to do that, I think, relatively shortly. As soon as I have more information on a timeline, I'll certainly provide it to the board so that the board's aware that work is going on. And had we had Carol here, Carol may have been able to go into additional detail on where that stands. So, so there's the two things. There's the existing issues around traffic circulation, which I think is a very important topic for the village, and I think there's a way forward with that in terms of technical analysis, at least, and coming up with some recommendations. The other aspect of it as a public use space, it is private property. It is private property, and the streets that serve it on either side are also private property. They're Properties Trust. that's their responsibility. The UNA does not maintain those areas. We are interested, though, in discussions with Properties Trust about takeovers of some of that space on event kind of things. So we might be able to close a third or half of the parking lot for our Diwali celebration or our Lunar New Year celebration, where our facility is over capacity and have some additional space. So those conversations are ongoing, but in terms of any kind of replanning it as a public space, I think for all the encumbrances that you mentioned in your submission and all those that I've mentioned in terms of the roadways that connect it and the responsibilities, it's unlikely that would move forward in any, certainly not in any short term. Maybe when there's no longer cars on campus in some kind of future scenario, it might be a viable consideration.
Okay, Michael, you had your hand up before. I don't know if we've moved past the okay.
I just acknowledge, I know this is not a
Yeah.
position of UNA, and that's what I say in my first paragraph, but, it did come out of this Ian Carter, who evidently made a presentation to the board last year, and that's why it seemed to take some wings, okay?
Yeah, so Ian Carter, I think he initially raised the idea in a land use advisory committee meeting, and there was some discussion, and the chair of the board at the time, Richard Watson, urged him to make a delegation presentation to the board as a whole, which he did. We haven't had delegations of that sort, I think, since this board has taken office, but any community member can make a delegation. You apply in advance, and there are certain you could get 5 minutes, I think, something like that, and so that's what he did, and he presented that sketch at that meeting, and people asked questions, and they were like, "Oh, that's cool," but that was the extent of it. So, yep. All right. Are there any other questions or comments related to that agenda item? Okay, so thanks all. With that, I recommend that the board adjourn into a closed session to discuss the appointment of individuals other than directors to or removal from a committee, working group, or other body, and the approval of minutes for a closed session or restricted closed session of a board meeting. In other words, the open meeting is coming to an end. Do I have a second to move to close? Seconded by Ron. All in favor? Unanimous. And so we will take a 5-minute break and then